Hello there, sword friends. For lack of a better thing to do, I'm going to talk about this sword right now. It is a recent addition to my collection, one that I've only cut a few things with, and it's really fun. It's a MAS custom variety sword. I have no idea how old it is. Basically it's listed on their website, and I found it on eBay, and I paid like $400 for it. And I'm doing this because really I'm moving stuff around my house. I've got a couple other projects going on, and this one is interesting, and I can just talk about it without making a whole production out of the experience. Also, I think it's worth doing because I haven't exactly been favorable to mass, and this sword I do find actually pretty nice. I wasn't a fan of the last MAS sword that I got to play with, and this one I changed my tune just a little bit, though it is different and it suffers from some of the same complaints that I would have had in the previous MAS video that I made, but this one I at least think has some redeeming factors and some cool, interesting bits, and maybe you'll find it interesting, maybe you won't. But anyway, I'm gonna ramble about it. So if that's up your alley, then here we go, and if not, then I would tune out at this point. So I'm going to start with the kosh, or the end cap, this little pommel area here. And one thing that I want to note about this end cap area is that it has the same type of silver fitting, first of all, as the rest of the sword, and it has some sort of, I don't know if it's a floral pattern, I think it is, but it's crude enough to kind of look handmade, and I like the handmade look of it, though I don't know if it is or isn't. That said, it looks like this kind of might be hand punched. I guess I don't really know, but I haven't seen the pattern before, which makes me think maybe there was a little more handiwork on this one. Other bit to note is there's no ito running through, so you notice that the cap is just kind of stuck on the end. A lot of times this ito piece would run through a hole in the end here and be secured on. So presumably this is just glued on with some sort of adhesive. Whatever they're using, it seems to actually hold on pretty tight. It hasn't come off well. I've used it, and I've done some inadvertent percussive things to it, which I will share in a moment. Anyway, just an interesting bit of construction that it doesn't have any cap that runs through. Transitions are also really good here, so I like the way the Samegawa panel lines up. It's flush and even. The transitions are good here. Overall, the way this lines up is pretty good. Now, presumably, I have no idea how much this sword retailed for. I paid like $400 for it, so I think I got a good deal on it. But I'm guessing this would have been over $2,000. That's pure speculation on my point. I've done no research in figuring out what it would originally cost, but custom silvery fittings and a custom type of customness from a sword shop that tends to charge around that ballpark, it wouldn't surprise me if that's what it was. Anyway, the transitions do seem to line up well here. Now the ito is actually tight, so the knot, I can push it around. Again, I don't know how old this is, but I would speculate that it's 5, 10, maybe older. And the ito has held up reasonably well for what I'm speculating is its age. It actually seems pretty tight. Now I can move it, I can push it if I push hard enough, so I guess that means it could be tighter, but I know the last time I had criticized for some loose ito, that does not seem to be the case in this one. Now, that said, in terms of ito, you can kind of notice how the diamonds are wonky shaped. They're little and big and small, at least in the sections that are supposed to be, and then this is, I can't remember it's like a, oh man, I don't remember the name of this itomaki, but it's like a high-end samurai kind of wrap. It's a unique and cool type of wrap that's done here. It's just not particularly well executed in terms of the shape of the diamonds. And I know my lighting is probably making that hard to see, but the diamonds do kind of wander from left to right, big to small. Either way though, they are tight, so I might complain about them not being even or particularly well done, but in terms of functionality, it's there. I also like the attempt at this ito wrap. It's actually pretty comfortable on the hand. In terms of panel size, it looks like there's a reasonable size Samegawa under here, at least in terms of what I'm able to notice from the nodules. In terms of Minuki, they have the same silver color, though I do not know what they are supposed to be. It's really hard for me to tell. Just a pattern that I haven't necessarily seen before, but I don't know what those are supposed to be. There's another one up here. Maybe at some point I'll turn the lights on and look closer. Shape-wise of the handle, it's relatively small, and I want to say it's smaller than 10 inches, and on Mass's website it's listed as a practitioner of some sort of martial art that's using one hand. Now this might look like a katana, hell maybe it is, but I think it's a Korean gundo. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Either way, it feels great in one hand, though there's certainly no problem getting two. You don't have a ton of separation on here, but honestly I like this shorter handle and I like the way it feels. It's not sticky, but it does have a bit of a tacky feeling to it, and you kind of hear my hand sticking to it. I promise I haven't been touching sticky stuff that would make it worse, like I haven't been bathing in gummy bears or something. Anyway, The handle does have a nice feel to it. If I move up to the Fuji up here, it's tough to see because of my fun lighting at the moment. Maybe this is a good angle. Again, same floral pattern on the Fuji. I like the transitions. They line up here. They're not overlapping. They're not poorly done. The Tsuba, I don't know if I'm going to actually be able to get this in frame, is basically just like a mirror polished metal Tsuba. It's got chamfered edges, so it's not sharp, but it is just a flat metal disc. Now, it would have been nice if there was some more dimension here, I suppose. If this were a custom variety, ideally we don't have just a plain flat Tsuba. Ideally it should have some sort of tapering or swelling up to the center. At least I think. That's my interpretation of it. But anyway, it had a flat Tsuba, and it came actually with a couple other Tsuba as well, which are around here somewhere. Again, I'm moving things around, so it might be lost at the moment. Anyway, these are just kind of mirror polished, plain Jane looking Tsuba, and I do think they actually look pretty cool. They're reflecting things. Anyway, it has a unique bit of character. If I go down to the saya, now here we have, again, same type of match, and this looks like it is kind of glued over the top slightly. On this case, there is a transitional edge, but it looks like it is at least recessed to some degree, and they've held up pretty well. They're not cracked or anything around here. There does seem to be some crack forming a little bit along the back here, but overall, I would say this seems to be holding up pretty well. When we go down to these pieces, I don't remember what these central pieces are that hold things on, but you can see that these may have wandered a little bit. The glue, or kind of how they're set into the wood here, is not quite as clean. Particularly if I go down to this other piece here, I can see what looks like lacquer that is not as clean, or maybe adhesive that had to be reapplied. These things are notorious to be difficult to glue down, and a lot of people don't like doing them because they're hard to slide them up while the lacquer's done, and then it scratches all the lacquer up, and so I guess they're not particularly fun to put on. But these do seem secure. I actually used this a little bit. I did EI with it just a little bit, and this is not a belt system that I'm familiar with, and it doesn't seem logical because if I put it on my belt, it hangs horizontally, and as I move, it kind of tips forward. So I don't know how to use this thing effectively. So I just tucked it into my belt. And none of these things moved around, even though this thing was bouncing around and snugging on my obi. None of these loosened up or cracked or anything like that. So, however Massa secured these, they do seem to actually be secure, which I will give them some credit for, because very often these pieces are glued down with only a little bit of adhesive and they just come loose right away. These actually seem to be on there in a way that one would actually be able to use. The lacquer itself is black. The saya is reasonably shapely. I like the overall look and execution. It's not too thick, it's not too thin. It also has a flattened kind of metal kojiri and the same kind of floral style towards the end here. Overall, it's a shorter blade. I want to say it's like 25 or 26 inches. It's on the shorter side, and it's also Massa's L6. So let me see if I can show this. It's going to have some wood and oil on it, but c'est la vie. Now there is a hamon in here somewhere, and it comes out in the right light, but it almost has to be brought out in sunlight, because as I'm showing it on this light here, it doesn't really bring out any of the character. But this sword does have a hamon. It is in there. You can kind of see it a little bit. And then up towards the top here, this is the only implementation of brass that I see on the sword, is on the habaki, and this has a relatively simple habaki in comparison to many other pieces that I've seen from MAS. They often have more elaborate habaki. So I don't know why this one has all silver everywhere else and just brass on the habaki. Anyway, bohi, they start about half, well, 3/4 of an inch above, seem to be in about the same spots. Termination of the bohi is in mostly the same spot, and it's just a big, wide, thick, meaty, cutty-looky blade. And it doesn't have it has a very high shinogi on the Japanese side of things. I don't know if this is actually a Korean style blade, but you can see that the shinogi would be kind of where the bohi is. It's a very, very wide, beefy blade for being so small, and it feels honestly fantastic in the hand. I want to draw your attention to about the Manouchi area in here, because this is the peg that I hit several times. So I'm saying this sword feels good, but it is shorter and one that I wasn't used to cutting with, and I just wanted to bring it outside and cut a pool noodle. I didn't film it. I was playing around with it, having some fun with swords as I do. And naturally, when I get towards the base of the peg, I whack the peg and I say, "Oh, that's not good." But the sword, to its credit, not bent, no edge deformation. I don't see any bends, chips, rolls, and that's good, because L6, if it's not done properly, can be kind of soft and not be exactly what you would hope it would be. The edge seems to not be deformed, and I whack the peg at a pretty good clip, not at full force, but pretty good. And then I hit it again, and then I hit it again. So for whatever reason, I just could not escape this peg, and I clipped it pretty good. And on the last one, I actually I hit it so hard that I broke the peg. This is not particularly hard wood or anything, but I think it is worth noting that I'm not seeing, I hit it in somewhere around this area, but I don't see any blemishes, any dings. Obviously there's some schmutz here, but that's from me touching the blade. Anyway, no significant scratches, no bends, no rolling, and I hit the peg like 2 or 3 times, trying to not hit the peg specifically. My aim was, I was just not having a great day. Anyway, I broke the peg, and I didn't break the blade, so I thought that was fun. Now this is certainly a shorter blade for me. It's too big to be a walkie. It's too small to really be a functional blade for me, but it's at a fun, interesting size, and I will admit that it's kind of fun to move around in one hand. It's a different type of blade, and it seems like it's going to be a really mean cutter. I haven't cut any tatami mats with it, but the profile and sharpness on here seem like it's going to be pretty effective at that. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. It just seemed to be at one of those prices I couldn't refuse. I was able to buy the sword for about $400, and it seems like a hell of a sword, even though it doesn't seem like the right sword for me. It seems like a real fun one. Anyway, if there's anything you think would be worthy to cut, to do, to something else you'd like to know about it, please let me know. Anyway, that's all I had. I just thought it was a fun sword to share. Hopefully you've I don't know what you garner from this video, but hopefully it's been interesting. That's all I've got. As always, cheers, and thanks for watching.